All right, we're starting with student questions. This is Inquiring Minds. All right. So you'll find a playlist for the Inquiring Minds on my YouTube. It has things from last semester and continue on. This will be the first one of this semester. But the idea is that it's like frequently asked questions or just questions from students. So I have students text message me, and as part of that, let's get that right. I want to respond this way. Sometimes I have students ask similar questions, and so it can help to kind of just combine them. Or sometimes it's just easier and faster or more fun to answer it this way. And sometimes I actually say something meaningful that's worth kind of clipping. So you're welcome to enjoy that or laugh at me. For instance, if my hair is doing something fluffy like it is today, who cares though? All right, I already taught today, so what is it? Actually, they were comparing it with this hair. They were comparing me to Abraham Lincoln today. And you can decide whether that's a good thing or not. But yesterday, my youngest daughter did ask me to put something like a jacket she had like in my hat to store it. I'm like, I'm not Abraham Lincoln. So it was kind of appropriate, I guess, twice. All right, here we go. So, first student is, let's see. This student asks a couple things, and I have in my classes, sometimes I'll ask for what things you're dealing with, what questions you have, and I'll sometimes do it multiple times. So the first question they'd asked last week was, what strategies do you use to balance work effectively? And so one part of balancing work effectively is budgeting time, architecting your life by establishing how much time you commit to different things, like deciding exactly what that looks like. And actually, I guess I could bring up that on the other screen. I wonder if I can get it to work fast enough. But yeah, so budgeting your time means saying, I'm only going to spend this much time on this thing, or I'm going to spend all of this time up to a certain amount on this thing. And so, however you want to see it, like I'm going to limit myself to fun things that I know I can get carried away in, or I'm going to make sure that I spend at least a certain amount of time on a thing I really need to do, so that there's a kind of a minimum engagement for the things that we care about. And so to do that well and architect our life well, part of that is just deciding what we want to commit time to and exactly how much, what portion of our life at this time. And it does lean into the principle of building consistency and making intentional decisions over time is going to be better than being good at kind of binge doing anything. Like, if I can't figure out when I'm going to do this, so finally I kind of put everything aside and write for 9 hours, or have like one day where I just do all of this thing, whether it's connecting with people or whatever. I do all my social stuff in one day for 9 hours. That's not as meaningful as regular, consistent work over time. Though it can be productive in the moment, it's not a long-term healthy habit. Okay, next, follow-up questions this week for this were, what strategies can I use to balance my coursework with social activities? So we see that kind of, okay, so like I'm thinking about time budgeting, I'm thinking about architecting my life. What do I do now that I have two clear priorities? I have coursework and I have social activities. There are seasons when you have to go, you know what? This thing is more important than that thing. And it could be some seasons that I have to emphasize social, and other seasons I have to emphasize academic or work or whatever it is. So there have been seasons in my life where it was really important for me to be home, be with my family, be with my daughters and my wife, whether especially when they were younger, you know, that it was really important to make sure that I was there for a variety of reasons. And so that would be the equivalent if you're 19, if you don't have kids. That's like, how valuable are those relationships? Will those relationships die or wilt or whatever if you don't put enough into them? Well, then you have to prioritize it, or you have to decide you don't care about that relationship. As a father, I couldn't decide I didn't care about my wife or my daughters, right? But if you're aiming at something and someone else isn't aiming at it, and they aren't willing to work with you, well, that's a whole series of decisions you have to think about, as far as like, if you have to do coursework, or if you do care so much about this friendship or time with family or whatever it is. And so then architecting your life says, I know that I need this much social time. I will not get more on my plate coursework wise than allows me to spend this much time socially. And it could be social, it could be, some people are like, I want to make sure I'm at church a certain amount of time, or I want to make sure that I get to do this one thing or this specialty project or work on my own business or get to do my art, whatever it is. You're deciding kind of what you're aiming at. And so coursework's part of that. It's not the whole of that, which is probably wrong for me as a professor to say, but we are whole people. And there were times in my life where I was taking a full-time course load and working full-time, and I was just thrashed. And I had to recognize that there were some things that weren't going to happen. I either had to cut into my sleep or cut into getting homework done, or cutting into those social relationships. So strategies, though, is the practical thing. So strategies to balance coursework. First, you have to make the decision. What is the balance? And so, the rule of thumb is 9 hours of work for every 3 credit hours of college that are 15-week long courses a week. So use that as a starting place. Strategies to balance them is sometimes it's no matter what, I will always block off these 2 hours on a Friday night or these 3 hours on a Saturday or whatever it is. These will always be for making connections and investing in this one relationship. So whether that's a date night, whether that is whatever it is, like it's making it non-negotiable. Oh, sorry, I got distracted by someone out in the hall. So making conscious decisions or choices about what you do, and then saying making a commitment, committing to no matter what, I will always schedule these 3 hours. I won't cancel. They are for this person or this group of people or whatever it is. You watch shows like Blue Bloods, they have Sunday dinner no matter what's happening, and so the show kind of regularly depicts that. There's something to be said for consistency, tradition, and commitment. And those things, knowing you can look forward to them, making them a priority, no matter what, whatever time you say you're going to do, commit to it and kind of hold yourself accountable to it. Get there, be present, be in the moment, and then know that. And sometimes what that does is actually forces us to prioritize um, the how we get coursework done. And forces us to learn better strategies for getting the coursework done too. When my girls were babies, we had a regular bedtime routine, and that usually meant 20 or 30 minutes out of my day, no matter what, because I would read them stories or sing them multiple songs or rock them to sleep, whatever it was. And that was kind of a non-negotiable. It didn't matter how tired I was. It didn't matter if I worked a 12-hour shift and went to college and then came home and had homework. That was something that I kind of committed to do. So um, part of it is just committing, and then finding, if you know you've got that one thing for 3 hours, it's a lot easier to manage the 50 hours of the big thing, and kind of and become more efficient. Cool. Taking a long time on these questions, but hopefully those were good. Next question. Question number 3. How did you figure out a career path that made you happy? I didn't choose a career path so I would be happy. In fact, my main goal in life is not to make myself happy, which is in some ways countercultural. If I were aiming at making myself happy, every time I got sad, I would try and change my circumstances. And so there's a danger in emphasizing being happy. There are more important things in life. And so what I do, I end up being happy by focusing on other things. I don't actually pursue happiness, even though as an American, as a citizen of the US, I technically have the right to pursue happiness. It's just not a wise thing to do. You are happy when you're accomplishing something meaningful that adds value to your community or to other people, or when you feel like you're growing, right? So the worst thing I can do is focus on my own happiness. And so my career path wasn't about happiness. It was about, uh, is there something that I'm uniquely designed for, that, and you can go look at my video on why I became an English instructor, that I just made public a couple, like last week, to see the full trajectory for me. But as far as like, how do you do this? Well, first, you figure out what you're designed for, and then aim at that. You also want to go and try whatever you choose. if there's something that you care a lot about learning right now, that could be for a very specific reason, and nothing gets wasted, right? So I've been in, I was aerospace engineering because I like calculus. I did theater performance and production and lighting design, set design, that kind of thing, and did like stage play work. Then I did construction, and now I'm an English professor. Now, if you think about it, some of those things don't quite make sense until you look at how I'm an English professor. One, all the performance stuff plays out in the classroom. Theoretically am most somewhat aware of my stage presence in the classroom, the performativity of teaching. When I there's I'm able to do these kind of technical streams because I did technical theater and I've continued to grow in that skill, and so I kind of have a little bit of an engineer's brain, but also write a lot, or try to, or communicate. Um, so if we're, and my construction side helps me do basic things around the house and save money, which is sometimes necessary when you are supporting, three kids and a wife who stays at home to take care of them and teach them and stuff. So I've got, five people I'm supporting on one salary. And so it helps to be able to do basic things around the house, or to do a reno on my own or mostly on my own, or to, change basic plumbing stuff, that kind of thing, for now. So figuring out career path that made me happy. It's not about your own happiness. It's about adding skills. You will enjoy things you get good at. Everything will be hard at first. So if you're leaning in any direction, what I did was I leaned hard into anything that I felt I was supposed to do, or that learning would be meaningful to me. And so when I was in theater, I tried to become the best at and know the most at what I was aiming at, and tried to learn how to do it and ask questions and dig in. And so what happens is, as you get good at something, you get more confident in it and you feel better about it, and it makes you happy because you feel accomplished. You feel like you're adding value to other people, or this community around you. No matter how much you're making, and no matter how hard it can be sometimes, when you feel like, when you know that you're adding value, it's a lot easier to be happy, especially, and this may be different, and it may be wrong in some ways to gender this a little bit, but it seems more common. And when I listen to people who do psychology and sociology work, guys tend to, generally speaking, care more about adding, like having a very clear sense of the value they add and the work they do. Um, and generally, women are described in research and, on sociology, as being more social and drawing happiness from feeling like they're being a good friend, right? And so both actually kind of have to do with adding value, and so however you want to describe it, do the research. Check me out on that. It's only tangentially connected to my expertise, so I don't have all of the deep research. But that's what I focused on. How do you figure out a career path that made you happy? I didn't focus on happiness. I focused on adding value and growing value, becoming more valuable in skill sets, because then I'd be more capable when emergencies happened. And that's what I tell my daughters, and help them, like, develop this so that, even if it's something like math, right? A lot of people hate math. Well, sometimes it's because they don't have a why for it. But having those skills and being able to do them on the fly makes you better at problem solving, critically thinking, and in an emergency, being able to tell in the moment that something isn't quite right, or is on. So, develop skills to add value, and then you'll be happy because able to you'll be competent and capable. All right. So that was a series of questions there. Let's see what else we have. Question 1. Okay. This is going to be question 4, actually. Do you think I will have better job opportunities once I have a degree, even if it's not in the same field I apply for a job in? I tend to go back and forth on if I'm really going to school for my passion. I'm also almost done with my degree, so trying to just finish. That's question 1. A degree will help generally with job opportunities. It is more, but in a lot of ways, it'll open up doors that no degree doesn't, right? And so my mom went through, and it doesn't mean there aren't options, but my mom didn't have a degree, and she was really good at what she did, and really she is really good at what she does. But there have been times where she felt like it stymied her ability to take the next job, and that sort of thing. So I watched her as a single mom, getting a little, like, she did a little bit of college when I was 8 or 9 or 10, and didn't get to degree. And so with that, the degree as a thing, um, it doesn't actually, it doesn't mean anything on its own. People talk about it as just a piece of paper. What matters is what aiming at that degree does is really meaningful. There are also, again, like I said, there are some doors that can only open in certain areas if you have a degree. Uh, Alternatively, no matter what, even if you don't have a degree but you took college, being able to, and I tell my students this regularly, being able to um, describe how you learned the lesson you learned, why those were meaningful, and how you applied them, how you worked through that. Those sorts of things are really meaningful. So even if you don't have a degree but you took some college, it's going to be more meaningful in an interview with someone asking about what you've done, or where you've been, or what you've been learning. That's, you're going to show that you've learned. And so it's not just about the paper. The paper will open a door, potentially in some circumstances. And if nothing else, some people will see it as a key in to what to your character, that you can do something consistently over time and accomplish a goal. That that is a character oriented ethos or credibility that you get from having a degree. And it's also one of the main reasons why I say it's not going to do you any good to just get a degree if you spend, and you're using GPT or AI or whatever to do all your work, because you're going to get in the door and not be able to do the things that will keep you there. So if you get hired, you're going to get fired faster, because you're not going to be able to do the work you're supposed to, or you're going to have to learn on the fly, and it's going to be really painful. So does it have to be, does a degree have to be in the same field as the job you're applying for? Not necessarily. Some jobs just require a certain level of education because they want a minimum level of literacy and research capabilities or whatever it is. And then some jobs are very specific. They're looking for very targeted expertise. So it depends. Um, but the good thing is CGC does have career counseling. They'll do job interviews, mock things like that. And so you can go there, look at that, talk to people in the Coyote Center online, and set that up. There are resources for you. Um, and if you're the second part of that was, I tend to go back and forth on if I'm really going to school for my passion, but I'm almost done. So also, passion changes. And if you're younger, passion is oriented toward what you feel like you're good at. The reason you like something is because something along the way made you feel like you were good at it. Whether that was a teacher praising you in that area, or whether you feel like that's the thing that you're special at. When you do, that you have a different gifting or skill set that makes you better at that thing. That's usually why people have a passion. And really, if you think about it, a passion is, well, aside, we'll ignore the Greek mythology or whatnot of passions, or the, that sort of thing. But the idea is that it's something you're excited about, something you care about. Well, that's not a job, right? That's not something, you don't get excited to do work. You get excited about the value you're adding and the work that it takes to add that type of value or to accomplish that goal. So people rarely are just like, yay, I want to do X all day long. Yay, I want to engineer draft all day long. It's like, no, they probably got into engineering because they wanted to solve complex problems, enjoyed mathematics, and had a skill set that worked in that direction, and liked the idea of working on and designing the larger pieces of things, right? And then all the skill sets they added along the way. Like, the passion isn't engineering drafting necessarily. The passion isn't just working calculus problems to work calculus problems, right? Or it's like doing Sudoku. Who wants to do Sudoku all day? Like, that's my passion. It's like, eventually you're going to get bored with that, because there's no primary value. It's a skill that allows you to add value. Okay. Let's see. There is a question about government. Question 5. What's your opinion on why our government is doing all of this in regards to Chinese apps? Do you think they will continue to target other apps and even gaming companies? All right, admittedly, I'm going to answer this mostly because I'm not well informed on it, and I'm not going to, make a big political statement anyways. Um, I think that I don't know enough about this, and I am not knee deep in the weeds on user agreements or things like that enough to really to judge whether the government is accurately like doing this and it's for real. Because I don't have access that the CIA or FBI or whoever has, so I have to trust the layers of authority over me and the expertise they have. And so I don't know if those are harmful apps. I don't know if the ones that are US grown are harmful apps. I try and be careful about how I use my data. I also am a bit more, it's like not even like I'm a public figure as a professor because when anything I say anywhere counts as like representing Maricopa unless I or can count as that. And so it's kind of a little bit different. But the bottom line is I don't have enough actual information to say whether an app is good or bad. And if there are politics involved, I can hope that the people making those decisions are doing what I tell my students to do, getting good data, making sure they're well informed, or that their team who's helping them make the decision is well informed. And whether it's China or somewhere else, those things have been. It is possible that from a sociocultural standpoint, in any economic situation, that people could use things like that to reorient toward local apps or local resources, things that would keep dollars in a country versus out. Um, so there are some things that even if I have an opinion, I may not trust myself to know enough. I might and I'll hint like on this one, like I don't use TikTok. I because I have it's hard enough to do YouTube and Instagram and Facebook. Like that's hard enough for me to keep up with. And TikTok, I don't see as a social media platform, but a media consumption platform because people aren't really interacting with people they know. Like maybe you'll share a video from it or something. Like I get videos from friends, and so I'll watch the videos outside the TikTok app, like embedded in a message or something, if possible. But I'm not like having deep discussions about things that happen on TikTok with people in my life. So I do that, however, with YouTube. And so, or I'll message people directly in Instagram, and my wife and I will share videos and talk about them. And so that's different. So I haven't had the need to go to TikTok. My wife uses it and looks at it. I hear about it from students and watch some things that they send me where possible. But ultimately, the other thing is, do you think they will continue to target other apps and even gaming companies? It's not a good idea to aim at the future. And you have to have a full pattern. The other thing with government is that it cycles, like leaders cycle. And so what people emphasize now, as we're seeing, like when the parties change hands, can get reversed. And so we have this kind of ebb and flow on certain issues that we have to be aware of and kind of step back and see the cyclical pattern. Note when something goes really weird. Like, it is kind of a big deal. But there's also like this is a bit of the conversation these days when it comes to freedom of speech, when it comes to how information gets used. Like there's a lot to this discussion. And so I don't have a direct opinion except to say that like I'm not in those conversations deeply enough, and I don't have insider knowledge of what actual information is being used, even though I've watched some of the interviews of people. There are things, and there are too many shows about clandestine operations like Jack Ryan or Nikita or Jack Reacher or whatever it is, those sorts of things, 24, that like there are just some things that I will not have access to enough information to make a good decision about. And I've got too many people and too many things going on in my life that matter at a face-to-face individual level for me to worry about some of this like larger stuff. Whether that's healthy or good, I don't know. It keeps me from stressing about things I don't have control over. And I stay a little more flexible. Okay, I might have time for one more question and then I've got to go to a meeting. So this is a shorter version of this. Let me click through. What do we got? I did have another question about how should I balance my time between my friends if I can't overlap our hangout. So that's very similar to the first. I did add a little more detail, so this might actually speak back to question one. When it was how do I balance my social. But in this case, it was it can be tough to schedule when there are a variety of people with odd hours. And honestly, like I get that when we're doing like D&D campaigns and that sort of thing. But one of the most important things can be set that schedule that works for everyone and hold to it no matter whether everyone can show up or not. So whether it's a 30-minute window to meet up for coffee, schedule an 8-minute check-in phone call once a week, like have it on your calendar with reminders, or just find a way to align class and work schedules. Like work together to architect your life together, especially if this is someone who is a boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, spouse material. Like you guys should already, if your lives aren't aligning and you want them to, you have to work at that. It takes time to plan and say, how do we architect our life to cohese so that we get more time together and more time focused on the same things together. Because otherwise what happens is you end up realizing you're going in a different direction than them, and you guys, if you don't take the time to align, you end up in different directions. So whether that's whether it's different schools and suddenly you're like, I'm on a different path, I'm on a different schedule set, I'm in a different location, then that social friendship or relationship just doesn't end up working out because you don't take the time to make sure you're aligning. Alternatively, you could wait to worry about that and to so if those are existing relationships and you want to reinforce them, you have to architect toward each other. And if you even and be patient for the seasons when you can't. Alternatively, it's that larger question of like, how do I find who's really going to matter in my life? Like, how do I make new friendships or build or find who I'm supposed to have a long-term partnership or spouse relationship with? And it's who's going in the same direction I'm going already. Like sometimes those sorts of things guide us in decision making too. Who has similar life goals? Who has similar values? Who has similar schedules or interests? And so that's a regular piece of advice I'll give people. But if it's existing relationships, you have to make the choice, make the like block the time, and again, architect your life together. Spend time having scheduling conversations. Spend time having, and that's like big picture, like as the semester's starting, as you're choosing classes. Like I have students who have intentionally taken a class together so that their things could be aligned. You can go look at the interview I did for learning communities with Elijah and Cameron because they talked about intentionally kind of taking an engineering class when they were together and with one of their other friends when they realized that being in the class together was really beneficial for them. So that's just working a friendship together. All right. So that's maybe a little more to the other question. Let's see. Time management is always a big question. People always want to ask about that. I'm looking for things beyond that. Like I've talked about it a couple different places. And so some of that's like go back and if you have time management questions, I definitely have discussed that in other places. Let's see. Um, There's a question. I technically have a video that starts this process, but this has to do with like some of the learning communities I have where I've mashed up my writing course with chemistry. I do have some of the overlap there, but I'll give a short version here. When it comes to chemistry and English content overlap, how would you explain or describe the differences and similarities about the two languages or spoken and communicated between both subjects? So, I mean, English or writing and communication is necessary for people to communicate about chemistry. And so, but there are some things that like chemistry emphasizes, like there are lab reports that are common in chemistry, which developed out of letters from chemists one to the other, so that they could confirm or nullify findings or verify findings. And so that's part of it. We can also use the lenses we get from writing and technical communication and scientific and like the aesthetics of science and all that fun stuff to think about how chemistry is presented. So we can, so in that class, when I mash up with chemistry, we talk about the visual design of the periodic table. We talk about how information is encoded in those visuals and how you can actually do the periodic table a variety of ways, and that changes the whole design. You can also spice it up with some color or texture differences to help indicate. You can add visuals instead of just like icons or pictograms or emojis to help make a distinction between the elements instead of just their elemental symbol or something. So and there is a lot with chemistry, like chemistry anchors to hard science. And so there's a lot with evidence and research that goes into it, especially primary research, but also like the sociocultural aspect of writing would help us have a lens into how what's valued as knowledge and by whom, whose knowledge is valued. You know, if we look at Marie Curie, she got Nobel Prizes, I think, after she died, like posthumously, and but she couldn't get a seat at the table in some conversations when she was living, and that was because of her role as a female in society. And so she had to, and there were other women in chemistry that you can go back and hear about, and where they push and they try and they co-author papers and then they kind of disappear because they can't get traction, especially in the late 18, early 1900s. So there's a lot there. As far as language goes, chemistry nomenclature is literally the patterns of language that chemistry uses. So Crash Course has some stuff on that. Um, am I missing anything? Explain, describe the differences, similarities, how the two languages spoken. Yeah, I think that's the starter. There's a lot to it, and that's part. And sometimes I have students actually write about that, so I don't want to give away too much. But I do have a longer video that goes into some of the more nuanced details of that. And where I've talked about some projects that I've used in that class. All right, with that, I think that's all the time I have for Inquiring Minds today, which is lame because I got like 70 questions this semester, and these are just the ones that are most recent that I didn't get a chance to type a response to or text a response to. So if you find this useful, enjoy, have fun. Feel free to send me questions. My number, I do give my student text message number. If you've got it, cool, send me a question. You can also put it in the comments. You can also text it to the number I have, I think, linked on YouTube, which is my student channel as well, or student phone number as well. So have fun, enjoy your day, keep asking questions, I guess.